This episode of the Central Texas Football Podcast is brought to you by Ranch Masters Ranch and Home Realty. You can find them in Lake Whitney, Texas.
Hey, I mean, that was a good point.
I think we might start seeing some go back.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Central Texas Football Podcast. My name is Kenny Heath, and today I got Terry Bennett from Sideline to Sideline joining us. I'm coming to you from the worldwide headquarters in Blum, Texas. Terry's out east of the Metroplex somewhere, I believe. How you doing, Terry?
Doing well in the hidden bunker in Rowlett, Texas, as we're covering everything north to south and west of Central Texas. This is a little different. You and I were going to do some other shows and stuff, but at the time that y'all came on board, we had a little bit different of a lineup, but I think we're going to do okay with what we're going to be doing this year.
Yeah, and Ryan usually is on the podcast, but he took a job in Arkansas at Lyon College. He's on to do what he went to school for, so we wish him all the best. And we'll kind of be doing – I'm sure you'll be on here a little bit. I've reached out to some Central Texas sports media type folks, and they're going to hop on with us, and I think it's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we brought y'all on and we had the show welcoming you on, we talked about it. I don't think that there's a better – 2-year period that we've brought y'all on as far as where Central Texas football and what your coverage area of Central Texas is for 4A, 3A, and 2A. I mean, you're talking about no joke, the heart of, in my opinion, Texas high school football in these three classes.
Yeah, it's a really cool area, man, because you can have the best 2A football in the state. You got five in Lake Belton and maybe have one in Waco here pretty quick. So really happy that you and L4 Media reached out to us. Kind of what we were, we were kind of independent, had a few people kick the tires on us, but really, really excited that you guys reached out and we're part of the network now.
All right. So I will let you drive the bus tonight. Where do we start first?
Well, let's start with our Matt Step question of the week. And I'm going to ask you first and get your answer before we read Matt. So what we're going to do is our own version of two truths and a lie. All right. I'm going to give you three scenarios, and you tell me which one you think is the most unlikeliest to happen in the Super Centex area this year. All right.
I like that.
So number one, the Axtell Longhorns stampede their way to a Region 2 title.
Okay.
Scenario number two, for the first time in a long time, the mighty Mart Panthers are not district championship. And scenario number three, the Gatesville Hornets or the Robinson Rockets slide into the last playoff spot in District 12 4A D2.
Man, we've talked about what, Mart's district, that ended up being our toughest district in that division. I really, really want to say that is the lie, but I don't know if I can. Axtell, they return a ton back from a really good 8-1 team. I'm going to go with the lie is Mart not winning district. I still think they're Mart. In fact, right before I started, we jumped on together. I was just kind of getting my notes together, and I just shook my head as it felt like they lost a lot last year. And then you look at what they have coming back. I mean, of course, you got Montrell Medlock, but just everybody else around him, they're still absolutely loaded. So, yeah, I'm going to say that's the lie. I still think they win district.
Well, no. The lie was that they will not win district.
That's what I meant, that they will not win district. That's what I'm saying. I think they will win district still.
Okay.
I think it'll be a dogfight. I don't know if they'll go unbeaten in district, but I still think at the end of the day, they're going to be left standing.
What do you think about District 14 or 12 4A D2? I mean, do you think Conley can slip up a little bit? They got all the talent in the world. They really don't do much in the playoffs. Can you see a McGregor or a Robinson with, they got a young quarterback slipping in there and maybe upset, and also Lorena's replacing a bunch. They got new running back, new quarterback. new receivers. Their big tight ends out for the year.
Oh, really? I had not heard that.
Yeah, Brock Cool is out.
Oh, man, that's tough. And you know, Lorena also sliding back up in class, and so all of a sudden now depth becomes an issue again. And not that it's a big issue, but it is an issue when you're talking a district like a La Vega and a China Spring, and especially a China Spring, who, you know, they're a lot like Carthage. They're a 4A Division II team with a almost 5A Division II roster as far as just pure numbers and also pure talent. But you go to Conley, and I mean, look. Conley, year in and year out, they're one of the teams that Grant and I always joke about, like, you know, and this isn't a knock on the program, but they look like Tarzan, play like Jane in some of the biggest moments. They're going to look really pretty. They're very athletic. I think Coach Garrett does a really good job down there, but it just always feels like when they're at their best, they still leave 2 or 3 losses or wins on the field. This year, they're not at their best. They're replacing a ton, and I think that's going to hurt them. You brought up Gatesville earlier. I mean, this is a team that quietly went 7-5 last year, and they return a good core. So I could definitely see the Hornets sliding in. Robinson, you know, they return a lot. I just don't know, man. The Rockets just every time it feels like they're starting to gain footing, they take a big step back, it feels like. And this feels like this could be a quote unquote launching pad for the Rockets season. But yeah, I definitely think 4, 5, and 6 are completely in play in this district. And I think when we did our preview show, our Big House preview show, which is on our Patreon, it will be up on YouTube at L4 Media here tonight after we get done. I think we both actually had Gatesville and Robinson. I think I had Gatesville and he had Grant Goodwin, my co-host, had Robinson in that 4 spot. We both had Conley flipping out, I think.
Okay. You know, you look at Gatesville and Robinson, both coaches, they're on year 3, Lancaster and Hunt, Coach Hunt over there at Gatesville. And both got the programs, I think, pointed in the right direction. Matt Stepp, he says number 3 is the lie. No knock on Gatesville or Robinson. They're a playoff team in every other district in the state. The problem is 12-4A D2 is just brutal. If any of the top 4 are vulnerable, it's Waco Conley, but it will still be an upset. And I think I kind of agree. If Gatesville does beat Conley or Lorena, it's going to be an upset. But I think it could happen. I think, you know, I feel the same as you and Grant, that, you know, it's not out of the question that one of those 2 teams can make the playoffs.
I mean, when you're in a district with the likes of La Vega and China Spring and Lorena, and you're a Gatesville or you're a Robinson, the biggest thing is, you know, you have to accept that you're probably not going to beat those teams. And so your biggest thing is coming out of those games as uninjured as possible, you know, you don't want to be walking wounded and all that. And that's one of the things I do think coaches now have a better grasp of. Oh, I know we can beat this team. I know we can beat this team. It's these 2 games, or I know we can lose to these 2 teams. It's these 2 games that we have to win that'll make the playoffs. And not that they don't try in the other ones, but you're going to pull your starting quarterback against, you know, Waco La Vega if it's 28-0 in the second quarter. You know, what's the point of playing him and him getting hurt just to make the score look good? Go on, move on, pack in, and go another day. I don't trust Conley as much as he does on this. I really don't. I don't even know if especially Gatesville, I don't know if that's an upset. Like, and we're talking as of right now, Tuesday night, week 1 of the season. We haven't even played a game. By the time they match up in district, we might be talking 2 completely different stories. But I'm just saying, as of now, I just don't think Conley's like, oh, you lock them in as the 4. Let's go.
Yeah, and I think Conley probably has the best athlete in the district in Jamarian Vincent.
Oh, yeah.
He's a stud at QB. But, you know, I read the preview in the Waco Trib. You know, Coach Garrett said, you know, he's kind of in a battle for quarterback with a younger kid. I'm trying to find out where I wrote that down at. It would be Mr. C.J. Evans. So they're kind of locked in the quarterback battle. And it makes sense. If the Evans kid can spin it, then you can put Vincent, who's probably, you know, like I said, the best athlete in the district, anywhere on the field and get him the ball. So that'll be interesting how that unfolds. But, I definitely think China Spring and La Vega are locks for the playoffs. And I think more than likely Lorena, but, yeah, that 4 spot's going to be up for grabs.
But I can see a case where Lorena starts to backslide a little bit simply because if injuries keep mounting and if they can't find consistency and it feels like that's been their thing since they've won state. They've had good quarterbacks, but they've been inconsistent. They were in a tough district last year. I'm not pretending that they weren't, but it was a 3A Division I district, and that's just different when you've got La Vega, who now the biggest thing about La Vega that Grant and I always joke about. I mean, this is a program that literally built itself on power football, and we're gonna just out dominate you on defense and wear you down, and then we'll score our points. Now they can score, and that's the scary thing about them. So, again, I don't think Lorena is as much of a lock. I still think they make the playoffs, and I still think they make it third. But it wouldn't shock me if we're talking Conley and Gatesville are in, and Lorena's sitting on the outside.
Yeah, I think it could happen. And then you talk about La Vega, that running back, Bryson Rowland, he's been there forever. I mean, he's a freshman. He's a senior this year. He's about to hit 5,000-yard mark. I think he's kind of what puts them over the top as the favorite because China Spring, they have holes to fill. They lost Cash McCollum. Now Matthew Battles is going to fill in at quarterback for them, kind of an athlete-type kid. Not a big kid, but he's a gamer. And so it'll be interesting. They do bring back quite a bit on the offensive line. They got the big tight end, the Dean Hanna kids. So they're going to have to find some skill battles, but I think they're still going to be pretty tough.
Well, and La Vega does have to replace the quarterback, and that was the thing that transformed them the last 2 years into being a team that could score on anybody. We're going to have to see, do they at least understand now, hey, we've got to throw the ball? Because, that's not what La Vega's done for 20 years, and they've been very successful. But you were starting to see that kind of, teams weren't, and a lot of it had to be with what districts they were in, of course, as well. But they weren't scaring anybody offensively. So I'm curious to see if they can develop a quarterback. And that's the fun thing about this whole district. You've got some powerhouse teams, yet you don't have one team that doesn't have at least 4 or 5 major questions. And that's why this is one of those districts that on paper, it sounds great. And I could see 2 teams making long runs, but I could also see this district being out by round 2 of the playoffs just because of who the matchups will be in the first 2 rounds in a very tough area. Yeah, very tough region.
Hey, let's go talk about the Alvarado Indians in District 6 4A D1. Man, one of the best quarterbacks in the state in Collier, 2,800 yards, 27 touchdowns, rushed for over 1,000 yards and 20 TDs. They're going to be in that region too. Man, I think they may have something going. I mean, that kid's something else.
Well, and just like La Vega, there were a team that was based on a run game and defense forever. They started that transition a couple years ago when they got the new coach in. It took them a little while to hold and give the program and the town credit. They allowed that time because a lot of times when you're changing from a run-based offense that's basically been pretty solid for many years, you're going to get people wanting to throw the ball more. But once you actually do it and it's not really good, you'll see people start to gripe and to bitch about it. Alvarado didn't. It kind of reminds me of how Monahan's after Mickey Owens retired and they started throwing the ball. They looked really bad for like 2 years, and now they're a region favorite out there because they can throw the ball. Alvarado's the same way. And they also returned 7 on defense. And if you go look at the scores from last year, you're gonna be like, well, what does that matter? But look at the district they were in compared to where they're at this year. I mean, this is a district where Alvarado might not get challenged within 3 touchdowns by anybody.
Yeah, I agree. They gave up about, according to the stats I saw, about 31 points a game last year. But like you said, that district they're in is a powerhouse district. I look for that's another tough region that they're in too. That's going to be a tough one to get out of. It'll be fun.
And I will say this, in saying that about them in district, I don't know if it'll be this year, but don't be surprised if they get into the playoffs and make some noise. And that's Lake Worth with head coach Todd Peterman. He was the coach that took DeSoto a few years ago to their first state championship and then kind of got unceremoniously dumped. A lot of politics. It was really ugly. But he's now back ready to be a head coach after he was a defensive coordinator for a few years and stuff. And I don't know if he'll do it year one, but I would not want to play them in week 7, 8, 9 of the season when that program starts to really get his identity, because they're going to be physical and they're going to be fast on defense.
Yeah, they were a playoff team last year. Is this his first year there? Because I know he was at Oklahoma, then went down to Brewer for a while. Is this his first year at Lake Worth?
Yep, this is his first year. He got named. In fact, he kind of got named not late, but later in the coaching off season.
Yeah, I know Lake Worth area well. It's kind of some of my own stopping ground, so I'll be rooting for them guys. All right, let's hop over. Let's go 4-4A. Just talk about Stephenville right quick. You know, Brownwood's over there too. They lost a really good quarterback last year. But Stephenville, speaking of the passing game, they return Ryan Gafford and Tristan Gentry, who's committed to Tech. I don't know if they're going to, you know, that's their strength. But if you look at that defense and you take away the Decatur game and the Wiley game, man, they played Anna in the playoffs. They, including those games, they only gave up 21 points a game. So they're kind of going over to a district that I think is probably easier than the one they are, you know, with Marble Falls. Brownwood's going to be tough. But I still look for them to, I don't know, be that maybe a region favorite out there in Region 1.
Yeah, when you look at what they did last year defensively, they held, we've talked about these teams and how great they were. They held Alvarado to 7. Of course, the year before, Alvarado had shocked the state. That's kind of when Alvarado announced themselves, when they outscored Stephenville in one of those really weird weather games where they wouldn't stop the game. I mean, they stopped the game, but they kept playing after, and it was like 2 a.m, and it was really fun. They held La Vega to 14 points last year. They held a really solid Dallas Carter team, who I think is going to be a real threat in the region this year where they're at, to 10 points in the playoffs. And I go back to the Brownwood game last year. Grant and I was there, and this was supposed to be Brownwood's best team in a long time, and it really was with Ike Hall at quarterback. And Stephenville lost not only their first quarterback, but their second quarterback. And I saw a team basically just will themselves to a win. And I am one of the biggest ones. I think that kind of stuff gets overrated at times. I'm not saying that it's not there, but I think people lean on that kind of stuff. Like, well, why does a quarterback win? Well, he's just got all the moxie. Yeah, whatever. He's got talent. Tom Brady had talent, folks. He didn't just win because of guile and luck. But this team against Brownwood last year, that's what they did. They had no business winning that game. I don't think Brownwood challenges them this year. I think Brownwood takes a bigger step back than what people think. I think the team that can challenge Stephenville, and I don't even know if they challenge them, but it's going to be fun, and that's the Lampasas Badgers. Lampasas, they are a team that has just kind of become hey, they're like Glen Rose. We're going to get a quarterback. We're going to develop him for a couple years. And then when his junior and senior year, we're going to explode. Last year, they started that. They went 11-3. I saw them play against Wimberley, and they really played that. They gave Wimberley a lot of problems, but Wimberley was just Wimberley, and they wore Lampasas down up front. But yeah, I think Stephenville got a really tough non-district schedule this year, because I think they realized, hey, our district, we're gonna be able to walk through it a little bit more than we have the last 2 district cycles.
Let's hop on. Speaking of Glen Rose, let's hop over. What district is that? I lost my piece of paper.
Oh, heck, let me look.
Hillsboro is in there.
4-4A Division 2.
Oh, here we go. It's upside down. Yeah,
this is an interesting district.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, we all know Glen Rose, and in Glen Rose, are we going to look back on this Glen Rose era as the one that finally breaks through, or are we going to remember 2 years ago and had Carthage beat, ready to shock the world?
Crazy.
I think, and I think if they win that game, they might have won state that year.
Yeah.
That was that catalyst moment, and then the fumble and all. And then last year they bounced back really good, and they return a good core. I mean, this is again, we just said it with Lampasas, and I use Glen Rose as the comparison. This is what Glen Rose does. They rebuild, they lay low for a couple years, and it really felt like 2 years ago they were early. Like, that was a sophomore class that's now seniors that are still really, really good. And I think I think the prohibitive favorite in this district, but I think there's a lot of teams underneath them, like Dunbar. Like, they can step right into 4A as long as they can figure the depth out. Because even though they come from 5A, they're still There's still depth issues. I think Dunbar can give some problems. I'm curious about Benbrook. I keep being told, well, they have really good athletes, but I still think at the end of the day, this is Glen Rose's to lose.
Yeah, and Hillsborough, of course, is right down the road. Kind of one of those places you kind of think is going to wake up one day because they've got athletes over there. Returning their quarterback, Darian Hodge, at wide receiver. They've got some dudes up front, and Jaden Magruder. I think it's going to be a struggle for them to make the playoffs in this new district with Godley's back. Yeah, they had a pretty good run a couple of years ago. Of course, their head coach is gone. Did he go to 6-man?
Yeah, I think so.
Runge, I believe, and a 6-man school to be closer with family.
Yeah, so, I think it was.
I just don't know that I can pick, Coach Almute, who's our favorite vegetarian on this show. I just don't know that this is going to be a struggle. It's going to be a struggle to make the playoffs for those guys. And Godley with the new head coach, I don't know how to play, Danny Dudgeon. He's got returning 6 and 4 starters over there. So I would assume that, they got them picked to finish 2 in the magazine. So they should continue to be successful.
I still right now, if I'm picking, which I guess technically I am right now, I'm going to go. And by the way, if you listen to the 4A preview show or the 3A or any of the previews, and if I have a different pick between now and that show, even though that show is new, that show was recorded almost a month ago. And honestly, some of these are so close. I literally change, every time I look at it. And this is one of them, because the way I have this finishing this year is Glen Rose, Dunbar, Benbrook, and then Godley. I just think that I think Benbrook, they return everybody on offense. And I mean that literally almost everybody. Yeah, they need to work a little bit on their defense, but they still return a good core from that. And so I still slide them a little bit higher. But this is Glen Rose's to lose.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, let's hop down to 5-3A D1, kind of my backyard here. I think one of the big questions to me is you look at West and Grandview, and they've got to replace some quarterbacks. Today, I was told that a kid named Mason Landers is going to be the quarterback at Grandview. They call him Peanut. 5'8", 170 was a quarterback last year on JV. Of course, they lost their do-it-all in Allen. He's back up at Crowley. But they do have some pieces. I think the running back, defensive lineman, Elijah Dominguez, is pretty dang good. And then you look at West, I think Gus Crane's little brother, Dub Crane, is going to be the quarterback. Of course, they've got a running back in Coy Klish, who is a 100-meter guy, state 100-meter guy. He's got speed, but I think they've got a lot of questions.
Yeah, and I know I've got some messages and you've got some messages, and people are talking about Grandview, and they're saying people are overrated in Grandview. They don't really have a lot coming back. Yeah, but it's Grandview. And so when you're a program like that and you don't lose a lot and you seem to be perpetually rebuilding, since 2018, they're 13-2, 15-1, 11-1, 9-3, 11-3, and 11-2. That right there, they deserve the benefit of the doubt. Now, I have heard though that I think the kid's name is Jaleel Allen is going to get some play at Kason Sanders. Grandview's young. That's their only knock to me. This is a team that's going to be really, really good at the end of the season. Now, the question is where does that place them in this district? Because you've got teams like West and Whitney and Groesbeck and Mahia. Mahia, we always joke, they're one of the most athletic bad teams you see over the last 25 years. And their coaches kind of started getting that program a little bit more disciplined and getting them a little bit more where they're consistently playing football. And saying that, I know they were still 3-7 last year, but they looked better as a 3-7 team than I've seen a lot of 7-3 teams. So the question is does Grandview have enough in this district? I think they do, but I don't think anybody goes unbeaten in this district.
Real quick, let's go back to Grandview. The Jaleel Allen kid, he is transferred to Crowley, so he's not.
That's right. You said that. That's right. My bad. That's right. Totally forgot about that one. So yeah, okay. So yeah, I got it. But anyway, so where do you see? Let's talk Whitney. You're Whitney. Where do you see Whitney? Because I think Whitney's one of those that I could see winning the district, and I could see having to fight for fourth place, for their playoff lives.
I think spots 1 and 2 are locked up. I think Whitney and Grandview are the two better teams in this district, just because. And I'll never count Coach Woodard out at West because he's just, you know, I think he's he's kind of like a Craig Horn. He does more with less than just about anybody in the state. But I just think 3 and 4 is just a dogfight. I mean, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Weston Grossbeck or if Maypearl snuck in, you know, because, you know, they got some kids coming back. Whitney, I think that this may be the year that they haven't beat Grandview since 2019. I think this may be the year they do it. They return, you know, the offense. They lost the 2 big receivers, but I don't think they're going to miss a beat. They got the running back, Tay Johnson back, who is really, really good. A veteran at quarterback in Mason Seeley. Probably, you know, they lost some leadership. It may be his time to kind of step up and do that. I think the defense is going to have to catch up. Lost quite a few. I think they had to revamp the linebackers, revamp the secondary. That's probably going to be the question. So they got a pretty good little pre-district schedule with Little River Academy and Mart and Benbrook and Rogers. So they'll find out early how that defense stacks up. But, yeah, I think it's Grandview and Whitney. Just place them any which way you want, 1 and 2. And then I think it's going to be kind of a dogfight there for 3 and 4.
Yeah, you know, Grossbeck, they are the perpetual 7 and 4 team. That's this is anybody. This is not a knock. That's Cherry Bomar, man. He knows how to win enough to make the playoffs. You know, he'll have, you know, of course, people remember his son Rhett played at Oklahoma at one time. Jerry Bomar was the head coach at Grand Prairie, and he's really solid. It's just. That's just the talent, and he knows how to, like you said about West. I think Woodward at West does it a little bit better. Obviously, they'll go 12 and 1 every couple of years. But Bomar, man, he's one of those teams you never want to go into that week thinking you have that win sewed up because they'll surprise you.
Yeah, and there's some good, you know, Grossbeck's got Trent Platt, Jordan Smith rushed for a bunch of yards. You go to Maypearl, they got a kid named R.J. Washington that looked really good. You know, he kind of disappeared in a few games, but, you know, he rushed for 1,500 yards. Mahaya's got a new quarterback, but they still got the Miles kid coming back. So a lot of good players in that district. And, you know, it's going to be kind of interesting to see who makes the playoffs out of there.
Well, and the fun thing about this district is it's going to be really, really fun next year because, again, a lot of the issues these teams are having, it's just youth. It's younger guys having to find their footing, and that's going to take a while, and then you're going to get this same group next year. There's going to be a ton of returning starters in this district.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's run over. Let's just talk about Malakoff real quick in that 7-3A. Man, to me, they're the favorite to win state again. You know, Mike Jones coming back. You got your 2 running backs in Jarian Hall and Jason Tennyson, and a lot of coming back on defense. I just don't see anybody beating those guys.
So here's the crazy thing about Malakoff. This is who they're playing this year, and these are their records. All right. So they're going to start the year off against West Rusk. West Rusk was 10-3 last year. They then play Lorena, who was 11-3. They then play Madisonville, who was 9-3. Then Grandview, 11-2. Then Commerce, 7-4. Then Mineola, 4-6. Then Eustis, 0-10, and Rains, 1-4. 2 bad teams. But then they finish out with Mount Vernon, who was 8-4 and returned a ton, and then Winsboro, who had a historical season last year and went 13-1. That's an amazing schedule. Yet, outside of maybe Lorena and Madisonville, and I'm only saying this because of depth, they're at least double digits to maybe 3 touchdown favorites in every one of those games. And I still think they're big favorites in the Lorena-Madisonville games as well.
Yeah, they're stacked. You know, I think they lost their defensive coordinator to Karen Kearns. I think he went over there, but I don't look for them to miss a beat at all.
Now, and this is no knock on the coordinator at all. He's a really good defensive coordinator, but it's kind of like when Franklin didn't really lose coaches because everybody's from Franklin. But if Franklin loses a coordinator, that's okay because there's a system in place, and the next coordinator is going to be from the staff, and he's going to not really change a lot of things.
Yeah. 3A, 9-3A D1, TIG, Fairfield, TIG's we consider them Central Texas. Fairfield's kind of on that 45 corridor. Zach Leha, the quarterback at TIG, is really good. Saw them play in the first round against West down at UMHB. Kind of a rainy game, kind of sloppy. I love Coach Woodard, but probably the worst 2-point conversion call I've ever seen in my life to win the game. It's raining. They try to throw a wide receiver screen, then throw back.
That's right.
And it landed 10 feet in front of his feet. 10 foot in front of him. A lot of people like to do something this year. They got to win in that district. Leha is legit. He's a good little player. I don't know that district. Westwood. I can't believe they're not favored to win that district. They got Tig according to the magazine, but that's who I see challenging Tig for that district championship there.
Hey, don't count out Diboll, man. Blake Morrison has really solidified that program. Last year they went 9-3, and that was supposed to be a little bit of a down year. They only returned 4 on defense, but that's where they make hay. So, if a team like, South Lake Carroll only returns 4 or 5 on offense, you still know that offense is going to be still really good. That's with Diboll when it comes to defense. Now, the issue for Diboll through the last 5 years is finding consistency on offense in the moments when you're playing really good defenses. And that's where they've struggled, and that's why they kind of keep sealing out at 9-3. Or, a couple years ago, Grant and I were there, and they second round, and they played Cameron Yo. And, a lot of people had Diboll winning the region, and they go right down the field on Yo and score. And then Yo scored in 2 plays, and Diboll just, once they got hit in the mouth, they didn't respond. And so sometimes that could be an issue. I still like the Lumberjacks to slide in at number 2. I like Westwood as well. I'll tell you what, Westwood's one of those teams. First off, it's good to see them consistently be decent. Being a guy that was covering East Texas for half of my career, and they were just, it was always sad. It really was. It's good to see them be solid. And they're a team, man, if they get the right draw in the playoffs, I think they could surprise some folks this year after last year's really surprising 9-win season.
Well, they got the quarterback, and didn't they had to move in at running back, another D1 kid that moved in to play running back for them. Maybe from Palestine or somewhere closer. Maybe
that was the trade. Maybe that was the player to be named later in the Adrian Peterson trade, because a lot of people don't realize he actually started at Westwood.
Yeah.
And for folks that don't know, Westwood and Palestine are not in the same ISD. They are separate. A lot of people think they're separate ISDs. But yeah, maybe that was the player to be named later in that trade from 20 years ago.
Well, let's go to it's not quite the District of Doom it once was, but it's pretty stout. 11-3A. Franklin is Franklin. Jaden Jackson's coming back. They got a new quarterback. The old quarterback, I think, was that Autry that graduated. Little River Academy. So what's their quarter? We talked about this. They got to replace Casey Mraz. They still got Cavalli and Ely. What do you know about their quarterback they're going to put up there?
All I know is they had a couple guys that were going to be battling for position. I think it was Preston Rowe and Brody Allen. Again, though, that's a program that through the last 2 quarterbacks have kind of proven, hey, I trust them when it comes to their quarterback. Mark Mullins has done a wonderful job there. Grant and I had a really fierce debate about this. I think Little River Academy is way better than what people are giving them credit for, and people are giving them credit like they're going to be a solid team. I think they challenge Franklin way more than Grant. I said this on the show. Franklin is Franklin. Franklin's going to win a lot of games. Franklin very well could play in state, but Franklin, to me, since they've made these multiple state championship runs, losing the first one, winning 2, and then losing last year in a great classic game, I think they have the most questions in that since then. And I think that they're in a district that is good enough to challenge them. I don't think anybody can really snap up and beat them outside of, in my opinion, Little River Academy, though I still have Franklin winning the district. But then, you've got Troy, and it's about time for Troy to do what they did. They'll go 6-4, 4-6, and then like they did in 2018, they'll pop a 12-1 out of nowhere. Tommy Brashear down there, he's got a really good offensive line coming back and a really solid quarterback. And then you've got teams like Rockdale. It's hard to believe Rockdale is where they're at. I mean, they just won state, and I say just, it was 6 years ago. But, Rockdale's a perennial solid team, and something tells me they're not going to be sitting at the bottom of that district for much longer.
Yeah, and going back to Troy, they've got one of the better pass-catch combos in the state, I think, in 3A anyway, and Reed Ketchum and McMurtry. I saw them firsthand when their first game in that new offense, and, man, they looked really good, and I think they just got better and better as of course, they were in a really tough district. They went 1-5 in that district, 4-6 overall. I look for them to get that third spot. I think Cameron's got a lot of questions. Coach Babineau coming in, replacing a lot of people. They lost quite a bit. Their quarterback's gone. He's got to shore up that defense. They gave up a ton of points last year. That's going to be a fun, even though it's not as tough as it has been in the past. I think it's going to be a fun district to keep an eye on.
I think Cameron Yo will decide how they develop, will decide how good this district is looked upon. As you said, Aaron Babineau came in, former University of Texas linebacker. He was with Terrence Mathis at DeSoto, at Marshall. He's from that coaching tree. The problem is with that what they do and what DeSoto does is you've got to have a ton of athleticism, because what DeSoto does and what Babineau, I think, is probably going to want to try to do at Cameron Yo, and we might be wrong. He might have a completely different philosophy, but you're going to want to put people in space one-on-one. The problem is when you do that, that also means your guys out in space one-on-one. And you know, as fun as Yo has been and as great as they've been in a program, you know, outside of player here or there, you don't really look at them and go, oh my God, that's the most athletic team on the field tonight. So I'm curious to see how what he wants to do meshes with them, but it's Yo, man. And I just don't see them staying down too long. Yeah.
You look at it and you go look at the stats. It's kind of like a total rebuild. You know, they lost almost all their skilled kids, lost the Braylon Drake quarterback. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that folds out. I think he's got a tough task.
You know, sometimes, no, you're right. But sometimes when you get and especially this feels like the Babineau hire feels like a cleansing hire. Like, you know, we were kind of stuck, you know, Rhodes retired. We brought in another guy, and then he left. We brought Rhodes back, and it never really connected on that second time. And we're saying that it wasn't like Cameron Yo was terrible, but I'll always look at the Franklin game 3 years ago, I think it was, when I've never seen a Cameron Yo. After I just told you earlier about how they punched Dieball in the mouth and Dieball couldn't respond against Franklin, they didn't respond. Franklin punched them in the mouth, and I have never seen a Cameron Yo team just completely lay down like they did. And so I feel like this is a cleansing type of hire. Will it work? I don't know. And sometimes the guy that you bring in as the cleanse, he's not even the guy that's going to stay there. He just has to be the middle bridge guy to get you going. But I think Babineau has a good future as a head coach.
Yeah, and I don't know that it ended great last year with Coach Rhodes. So
I don't think it did
on this cleansing deal. Let's drop down to 5-3A D2. We got Clifton, Toller dropping down or going up from the 3A D2 up from a 2A D1. Kind of, you know, made the state championship game. Ran into a buzzsaw on Terry Bussey and Timpson. But they're bringing a lot back. They still got Peyton Brown, who's been there forever. You know, he was injured a little bit last year. I don't think he played a whole lot of games, but
no, he didn't.
He's one of the best in the state at running back.
Yeah, the issue with them is, they bring a lot back, but what they lost is really, really important, like Isaiah Blessing. But also you lose your coach. And this is nothing against Coach Blake Mauser. I think he's going to be perfectly fine. I think Toller's going to be perfectly fine, but I don't think this was the good time for them to be stepping up into 3A Division II. Now, in saying that, they're in a district that they can win. Like, this is not a district that, if I'm Toller, I'm too afraid of. I think there's solid teams, and there's a lot of name teams. You look at Eastland, and you immediately think, oh, Eastland, and then you go, oh, wait, they really haven't done anything in the last couple of years. Like, surprisingly bad. Not just kind of stepped down, but like they were like 1-9 2 years ago, and they're 3-8 last year. And I know they made the playoffs, but that's because of the district they were in. Then you've got like Clifton, and what's Clifton? You know, they had a nice run. In 2018? They've kind of fallen back into that 5-6, 4-7. Early has a lot coming back, but they also lost a lot. So I still think Toller wins this district. I just don't really see them being much of a threat outside of maybe the first couple rounds.
Yeah, Clifton's, they've been down for a while. Coach Finney, nice guy. I watched the scrimmage, which you can't really tell much. Just not a whole lot of athleticism over there. I think, they've got some classes down the middle school area. They think that's going to turn things around. So it may be a waiting game over there at Clifton.
Yeah. I have a friend of ours that he sends us Clifton stuff, and he's literally said the exact same thing.
Let's go District 13 3A D2. Lexington, Rogers in this district. I think they're both could have big years. I think a lot of people are picking Lexington to win that region. The quarterback, Case Evans, has been spinning it for a long time. Coach Mole, we talked to him last year, and he said, that kid's been throwing a football since he's 4 years old. They really like him. His parents, they send us emails all the time with his stats. Our #1 fans. I like Lexington, man. I think they're going to be really good this year.
Look, Lexington's thing the last few years, and I'm saying this as a team that went to the region semifinals last year, is can they stay healthy? Like, can they stay healthy? And it always, and I know every team loses people, but it always feels like they lose a key player right before district starts. But other than that, they are absolutely stacked. I'm like you. I think that I like Rogers a lot. I think Rogers outside of this district is going to make some noise, but I don't think that they're going to be. I don't think anybody challenges Lexington, and again, and this is a solid district.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Roten, and he always at Rogers. They're always going to be really good up front on both sides of the ball.
Yep,
he likes kind of lost some of his skill kids from last year. They went 9-4 too. They were regional semifinals. They returned 6 on offense, 5 on defense. That's going to be a good little battle between Lexington and Rogers. Long-time rivals. That'll be a fun one to watch. Maybe that will be a road trip for you and Grant.
It's kind of funny you said that. I just literally drove through Lexington and Rogers this past week. And by the way, Rogers has one of my Rogers and West, and I know there's others, and people will tell me because like Carthage is the same way, Gladewater a little bit, but Rogers and West have those stadiums right in the middle of downtown that are just so cool because they're right off the main street. Yeah, and it's so fun to go to those games, and especially like in Rogers because you park across the street and you walk across the street, and this is a busy highway, folks, and you just know going through Rogers on Friday night, if you see the lights, you're going to have to slow down. And it's just one of those great football experiences.
All right, let's go down to 5-2A D1. We got Hamilton Heiko. They kind of picked them to that's a district. Coleman's been pretty tough here the last couple of years. They had a really good athlete / quarterback 2 or 3 years ago. Hamilton, didn't they make a run a couple years ago, 2 or 3 deep?
Yeah, like 3 rounds, I think it was. Yeah. In fact, I think maybe Coleman beat them that year. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, they were 6-5 last year by district. And, Heiko, 8-4 last year. They went 2 rounds deep. The magazine's got them picked 3 and 4. I kind of agree with it. I think DeLeon's coming back. They were really good there for a while when Yeager was the head coach, and Reggie Patrick, who's the Bosqueville head coach, was their OC back then. Looks like they're trying to resurge. They played.
They return everybody. And last year they were 7-5. If I remember correctly, they kind of came into district really hot, and then they had a couple losses in district. But that was a really tough district. But I mean, they returned 18 starters, and sometimes that's a bad thing. But when you're 7-5 and return 18 starters, and again, you're in a district where Coleman's there, but Coleman has some key questions. They do return a really good quarterback. But when you look at Hamilton and Heiko, I mean, they're okay. I mean, they're nothing. This whole area is just kind of in this. When you look at 5-2A and 6-2A and stuff, they're solid teams, but nothing that just really stand out. Like, oh my God, that team's a region threat.
Yeah, that'll be. Yeah, I think that's DeLeon. I'm interested to see how they do. Coleman, DeLeon may be fighting for that #1 spot. Let's go District 7, 2A D1. A lot of people, the hipster picks or whatever, have Axtell winning that region. Talked to Coach Craig Horn. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's the biggest dude on the field when practice is happening. He's really – they don't have a whole lot of size there. They got a lot of speed. I think, he thinks, depth's going to be a key. He's going to have to play an offensive type defense, blitzing a lot, stunting, cutting. But I like Axtell, the dreaded 10-1 last year against a Valley Mills team. It was kind of a rainy day, on turf, slippery. I like Axtell to win it. I really think, Valley Mills may challenge Italy for that second spot. They got a really good running back in Johnson, who is the brother of the Whitney running back. Both of them really good athletes. I like Axtell in that one.
Don't count out Dawson. They've got a really good quarterback in Brant Broatright. Last year they were 9-3, but I want to go back to Axtell. Look, for them is, can you stay consistent on offense. Levi Leathers is an amazing athlete. Heck, you talk about it. He is bigger than most of his offensive linemen. I think he is bigger than all of his offensive linemen. Can they stay consistent on offense, which will allow them to be more deadly on defense and to be more aggressive? You know, we're in an era, and it really was always like this, but we're really in an era now where it's called complementary football. Does your offense help your defense, and your defense help your offense? Mm-hmm. And when you look at Axtell, if you don't know who they are, and I don't mean this as a knock or anything, but imagine Dallas, an offense that scores a lot, which last year, the last couple of years, would allow their defense to play, ears pinned back. That's Axtell. So as long as Axtell's playing ahead, I think they're perfectly fine. The question becomes and we saw it in the playoffs last year, when you get into the playoffs, when you get into November and you get that first kind of cold snap and it's blustery and you get behind 14-0. Yeah, you have the offense that could catch that up, but can your defense make enough stops? And I think the sky's the limit for the Longhorns. I could easily see them flaming out in the first round, and I could see them playing in the state semifinals.
Yeah, and, they've got several weapons on offense, and I think it's going to be key for the Leathers kid to distribute, spread it out and get it to your kids, and I think that's going to help them out. The Colin Horn, who's the coach's kid, Tyson Michelle, Kelby, Troy Arlett's a good receiver, Kelby Holland. So they've got all kinds of weapons. Can they use them right? And, Italy, Coach Loveless over there, they went 7-6 last year, played 13 football games. You just can't count. They got, the magazine's got them.
Oh, it's Mike Loveless. I totally forgot he was in Italy now. Oh, yeah. I mean, hey, and by the way, I wanted to say this when we were talking about Bangs. Bangs and Italy have two of the best looking helmets, and they're completely different. Bangs has that, I always call it like that Puff the Magic Dragon look on the helmet. Yep. And then Italy has that shield. I just think they both look good. Yeah, and Italy's always going to be physical. last year they went 7-7 or 7-6. I think if I remember correctly, they returned a lot on both sides of the ball, including a good chunk of their offensive line. And when an Italy program and a Mike Loveless program has his offensive line back, he's a very happy man. This district's going to be tough. There are going to be dogfights, even for Axtell. There are going to be dogfights between 1 through 4, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's kind of weird how they split that Waco area up in 2 different regions, but I like it. It's kind of fun. So let's go to 10. Where's that other district? Okay, 13-2A D1, and that is Marlin, Crawford, Riesel, all kind of a McLennan County area district. I think what's interesting is can Crawford and Coach Greg Jacobs bounce back? Had a 6-5 season last year, which is not very characteristic of Crawford. They've got the magazine's got Moody or Marlin winning the district. I think that's going to be interesting to see how Crawford can bounce back.
Yeah, this was another one that Grant and I had a pretty good in-depth discussion on because, Crawford had come off of a 14-1 season and they were very highly ranked. Now, you have to remember one thing about them. It wasn't like they were getting the doors blown off. They got beat by Rosebud a lot, but it was by 1 point. They got beat by Marlin. That was by 3 points. They got beat by Riesel 13-0. And then they got beat by Italy 27-18. But if I remember correctly, I think that was one of those where Crawford was driving in to try to tie the game or go ahead, and they fumbled the ball, and then Italy scooped and scored. So was that just one of those weird bumps in a year, and Crawford's going to be back? I don't know. They have a really solid quarterback in Cade Smith, but I mean he's more of, and I know this is what Crawford wants to do, but he's more of what you think of as the old school quarterback / linebacker. He runs way better than he throws. I think that they're in a district that allows them to have some success, but I don't think they're not gonna be able to catch Marlin this year.
Yeah, and Marlin, they bring back Broderick Suitors, who's been the quarterback there the last 2 or 3 years. They've got a heavily recruited kid in Bryson Maxwell Steele, 11-3 last year. New coach Torres went up to, I believe, Naaman Forrest is the OC up there now. I think Marlin's going to be really good. I mean, paper they look, they return 7-7 on offense and defense. They're 11-3 last year. I think they're going to be really good.
I like Coach Rogers. I think he's going to do well, but I think people need to understand what Ruben Torres went through down at Marlin, and for him to have taking them. This was a proud program that had fallen to, I think at one point in 5 years, they had 6 wins. And then, a couple years ago, they had the famous where everybody was basically benched because of grades. And then they fired him, but then brought him back. And it was just, it was really tough. And the fact that he has them, they were 11-4 2 years ago. Then they kind of stepped back to a 7-5. But then last year, they kind of surprised everybody. They were a young team and they went 11-3. And now I think it's the best. And I think this is one of the reasons why Coach Torres went to Naaman Forest. He realized it was time, again, a cleanse, but not a bad way, but like new blood needed to come in. He needed to move on. He was just going to get kind of stuck in that. There always was looking over his shoulder. They've got the guy they want now. I think they have a super talented team. Look out for a young dude named D'Angelo Wright. He's a sophomore. We've got a couple emails from some fans. One of them is a Moody fan who happened to go look at some of the, scrimmage last week. Get those words spit out. I like Marlin a lot. In fact, I think I had them on the show winning the region, if I remember correctly.
Okay, and then you look at maybe Rosebud and Riesel lost a lot. They had the Gavin, the big quarterback that could have played right or left tackle for most 2 or 3A teams. Just don't know.
That is true.
The big dude. His dad's from Clifton. I forgot his last name. Oliver, Gavin Oliver. That's who it was. Him and his brother played.
But you know what? They return a ton outside of that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and his Gavin's little brother, Grayson Oliver, he's a running back, defensive lineman. He's coming back, and the quarterback that they got, Peyton Holscher, I believe he played wide receiver, running back last year. So he's a starter, just moving over to quarterback. I think they'll get that third spot, and then I don't know. Moody's got a new coach, former Whitney Wildcat. I forgot his name, but he went over to Live Oak. They're going 11-man. They're probably going to be
Live Oak
down.
is?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Waco Live
That's
Oak.
awesome.
Yeah. What was that kid's name? I forgot. We've had him on the show. His dad coached here. He was a really good quarterback. Led Whitney to the playoffs for the first time since the 80s, back in 2005. Lost two.
I remember that.
The quarterback was a sophomore, former Cowboys receiver. What was his name? I'll have to do that on a different show. But yeah,
while you're thinking that, I want to go. I was going to say, you kind of brought him up. Let's not forget Rosebud Light. I mean, this is a team, again, it seems like every team in this district is either returning a ton or they're returning some really key players. And I think with Rosebud Light, it's more about returning a couple key players. You look at their quarterback last year, I think it's Ray Rabroker.
Yeah, Ray Broker coming back.
Yeah. He threw for like 1,700 yards and 19 touchdowns. This is a very experienced senior group. The problem is last year you want to talk about being inconsistent. They would beat Crawford 28-27, and then they would get beat by Valley Mills by 5 touchdowns. I think it was not that bad, but it was pretty bad. Marlin destroyed them. And then they turned around and played Moody to a 3-point game. And I think they had to win that game to get into the playoffs, if I remember correctly. So again, for them, it's going to be finding consistency. And then, I'm just going to bring them up because it fits what I'm saying on the district. Even a team like Bruceville Eddy, who has been terrible. And I mean, I think they've made the playoffs once in the last 6-7 years. They return 18 starters. Now, it's 18 starters from a 2-8 team, but still, you've got experience. And so that just goes to where this district, it's very underrated with how deep it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I think your top 2 teams, I would say Crawford and Marlin, are just kind of a level above. But then the Riesels.
And I think Marlin's a level above Crawford, too, though.
I agree.
I think Crawford's closer to 3rd or 4th than they are to 1st.
Yep. I think you're exactly right. 10-2A D2. This is going to be a fun district. Mark, Fremont, Chilton. Mark returns. Medlock's coming back at quarterback. They do lose their running back to Waco University. J.D. Ross is transferred.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So I just don't – I think it's – and I text Coach Hoffman and, I asked him about J.D. Ross, and he just kind of blew that off and like, hey, we lose kids every year to graduation and whatever. It's just a next man up mentality. And I think he's not lying. I mean, it's just probably some of the deepest for a 2A Division II school. They got so much talent. They're so deep. Kind of reminds me of a Refugio or something. They just reload every year. I think they'll be fine. They play Whitney in week 0 or first game of the year. That'll be a interesting. How I think for Whitney it's a lose-lose. You lose to a 2A D2 or you beat a 2A D2. Nothing to brag about. But even though it's Mart, but
I was about to say it's Mart. I mean, Mart's a team that the only reason they would not play well in 3A is depth, because as great as they are, they sometimes, and this is why they haven't won a state championship in the last 2, and they've when was their last state championship? 2019, and why they've been upset so much in the last few years in the playoffs is they get late and they get out depth. They've got teams like that are like Falls City that just ran out multiple guys compared to what Mart did. Now, in saying all that, let's remember this: that in the last 5 years, they have 5 losses total. 2 of those are in a state championship game. One of those is in a region or a state semifinal, which was considered, oh my God, that's the biggest upset. And Mart is still where Carthage is. When those 2 teams lose before state, it usually your jaw kind of drops. Like, what? How? I got to go back and see what happened. So I still think they're all that, but I have to ask, is the fact that, and it sounds weird, I know, but is the fact that this core group has not been able to break through, are we seeing a pressure on them that we haven't seen on Mart because, Mart was winning so many states? I do think that this, and this stuff matters in programs like this. I do think that there's a little bit more pressure on this program and these players this year, because this is a very senior loaded core. They're going to be fine after this year too, but this is a special group that's moving on after this year.
Yeah, and you look like Hoffman, he tried to retire a couple of years ago and he came back, and then you thought after he lost in the state championship game, well, maybe he retires, and then you look back and, well, he's returning 16, 8-8 on offense and defense. There's no way he's going to give it one more try, and at least he's going to coach this year, we know. And then you look at a Bremond team and a Chilton team that have been really successful. Chilton lost quite a bit, the Red Brothers, but they bring back a lot, and so that's going to be interesting. I think it's a 3, wouldn't surprise me if you can just shuffle those top 3 teams any way you want to finish out the season.
Well, and what makes 10-2 a Division II so tough also is it's a big district. I mean, you got a team in Wortham that, they went 6-5 last year, but they return everybody. In any other district, you're at least putting them at number 2 in most any other district in this region and even in the state in 2A Division II. Here, I mean, they're being picked around 5th and 6th, and that means they're going to need to, quote, upset somebody. You've got a Gold Wave team in the Eagles. They returned, and I know they were 3-7 last year, but they returned 17. And if you go look at their scores last year, they weren't getting beat 50-0. This district is, I'm like you. I think at the end of the day, it's Martin, it's Bremond, and then after that, though, even Chilton, I think kind of like what we said, I think Martin and Bremond are cut above everybody. And then everybody else, but everybody else is still really, really good. And the 3rd and 4th place team in this district could make a lot of hay in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. And Goldthwaite, I don't know much about them, but you look at Meridian, and that's just right down. That's a county seat of Bosque County, and their enrollment is 106. They're 1 away from going 6, man. And you got to go play Mart, Bremond, and Chilton. Those poor kids.
And sad thing is a Yellow Jacket team that returned a lot. And again, I think they would have a lot more optimism if they were sitting in another district. But in this district, I mean, the biggest issue is you're playing 2 games and then you're in district. And for teams like Mart, they love that. But for teams like Wortham and Frost and Meridian and even Gold Wave, they're all having to figure out some things that you're not going to get the luxury of. Oh, hey, we've got 5 weeks before we have to worry about our first district game. They've got to figure things out right away.
Well, that'll do our preview of the districts. Hey, let's real quick, some quick hits on week 1 games. Where are you going to be?
So we are going to go. So we were planning on going to see Belleville and Salina at, I think they're playing at Mary Hardin, but that got changed to Friday. So now we're going to go Thursday to see Jefferson versus Leonard and Melissa. Jefferson, if Jefferson is good as what I think they're going to be, what people say they're going to be, they should win that game. But honestly, it's a close game. And we do want to see Jefferson before the playoffs. And then we're going to drive and stay in Tyler Thursday night, and we're going to wake up and we're going to go over and go to Shreveport for a steak dinner and stuff, and then we're going to slide back over to Carthage and watch Kilgore versus Carthage.
That'll be fun. I'm going to go watch Franklin, China Spring. They're right down the road from me. Another couple of interesting games in Central Texas area. I like Little River Academy and Conley. I think it's going to tell you a lot about both those teams and where they're at.
I agree.
That's going to be over there in a Bell or Elmont area, North Waco. Also like Franklin, China Spring. I don't know. Lorena has Austin Regents Knights. I don't know much about them.
I don't know if it's a private school. Well, I get it probably is not a charter because it's Regents. Well, I mean, they could be a charter too. I don't know. But yeah, that's a really good game for China Spring to start off with, is they're trying to, as we talked about, work in some more positional questions than they've had in a few years.
I kind of feel like it's going to tell you more about China Spring than it will Franklin. Where they're, Matthew Battles is a new quarterback. And like you just said, these skill kids,
that's a good question, man.
How they work.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we can 100% say China Spring will out depth Franklin. They'll have more players, but I don't know if they'll out depth Franklin. But yeah, I think, I mean, it's week one. Nobody needs a game. But I do think China Spring needs to feel better about themselves earlier in that game than Franklin does. Kind of going back to what you said, though, I do disagree with you about Whitney and Mart. If Whitney beats Mart, that's a great win. But
yeah,
if China Spring gets nothing if they beat Franklin, other than, we've worked on some things. Franklin's playing with house money. They're just going to do what they do. They're going to start hitting early. They're going to hit late. And if they come out with a win, great. If not, they're perfectly fine. They know it. They're going to move on down the road to their 3A stuff.
Yeah, and I like another game, West at Robinson. I mean, I think that'll be a good test, kind of figure out where get as far as West, new wide receivers, kind of figure out where. I think Robinson, they're in that district of doom, if you want to call it. They're a solid 4A team, D2 team, and I think that'll tell you a lot about kind of West, where they're at, as far as the quarterback play and stuff.
Yeah, and I'm about to say this, but I also want to preface it. There's one of the reasons why Grant and I never do a week one show is because it's just, we've done the preview shows. We want to let those marinate, but also it's like, there's so many week one games and we have no true key on everything. So it's really hard to decide what to talk about, but we always say this, and I'll say it next week here. I'll say it on every coach's show, every show I do next week. Week one of the regular season and week one of district are two of those weeks that you almost throw out what happens, except for the problem with in district, it matters. But week one, you're going to have teams that have the idea of we're working to get better. You're going to have teams with the idea of we need a win. Like, we need to start the year off with a win. So you're going to get, and I'm not saying the teams that are trying to work on things aren't trying, but I've been there. I've literally seen coaches calling basic offense and defense for the first two non-district games because that's not important to them. Game planning isn't important. It's getting their new guys blocking right on the simple stuff. So you have to take a lot of week one with a grain of salt. In saying that, I totally agree with you on this one. If Robinson loses to West, that's a big uh-oh. That's a big, and it's nothing against West, because West, I think, turns out to be a solid 3A team, but they've got a lot to figure out themselves. So if they go out and beat Robinson, that tells me maybe Robinson is where I think they are, a step behind everybody else in that district.
And going back to your point about, teams having different agendas in week one, I mean, I don't know what the agenda was, but you look back last year, Grandview, Glenrose, who play again this year, Grandview beat them 31-7, and Glenrose goes on, like we talked about earlier, 10-5 state semifinalists. They play again Friday night. I think it's going to kind of be a different story. I think Glenrose is on a different level, and I think it'll tell you a lot about where Grandview's at right now.
Well, but let's remember one thing on that one. That one is the week one of the bigger rivalries that nobody really talks about. Like Glenrose and Grandview, when they play, they don't like each other, but they respect each other. Now, when I say don't like each other, it's not like I grew up in a blood rival, Marshall versus Longview. It ain't like that. But these two teams have been playing for a long time, and they play really good when they play each other. So you're going to get those really weird week one. Like, how did they do that? Because like 2 years ago, and of course, the end of the season for Glenrose that year was that heartbreaking loss to Carthage. But 2 years ago, they started off the year and they throttled Grandview. When Grandview was, I remember us talking, they were one of the state favorites that year, and they beat them almost as bad. So that's a weird one because it's a week 1 game, but it's a rivalry game.
Yeah, and I think Kennedale Vega, that's going to be a good one, kind of a measuring stick for both those teams.
Yeah, and Kennedale, they're the last one of the group. When you thought about, the teams like La Vega and Alvarado and Kennedale, it was grind you down, fast linebackers and all that. And, Richard Barrett's been there for 1,000 years now. He's going to run that wing tee. And they're solid when they have athletes, but when they don't, they struggle. I don't know, man. I just feel like they're going to struggle this year overall. But in saying that, we're going to find out early. They also got Aubrey, who's a really solid team. And then they got Springtown and Panther Creek and Dunbar before they hit district. So Kennedale is either going to be really, really tough or really wore down by the time district play starts in October for them.
Man, that's all I got. You got anything else?
No, we'll be back week 2 through 16. If you like listening and watching these shows, get used to us because we've just started, folks.
Hey, remind me, what platforms do we need to go to get this?
Audio. You can go to s2ssport.com. That's www.s2ssport.com. And I'll tell you what, next week we'll have it on the crawl. We'll put that up sometime during the show. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/@L4 Media Company. And you'll see that logo that's on the show and everything. There's a couple other L4s on YouTube, but we're the one that has almost 8,000 subscribers, and you'll see that logo that you see right there on the screen. So you can check that out. You can find Central Texas Football Podcast on Facebook. Just type in Central Texas Football Podcast. Also, Sideline to Sideline. Just type in Sideline to Sideline on Facebook. And we cross-share all this stuff, so we'll be sharing stuff with each other. And so you can find us anywhere like that. If you have any questions, email them. What will you give out your email for questions for the show?
Yeah. Let me get it. I don't remember what our show email is, so I'll do that next week.
All right. So for this week, if you have any questions, you can email them to me, Terry@s2ssport.com. And I'll forward them to him or I'll answer them, whatever that. And I don't know yet when we will record this show. So I do a ton of coaches shows. Normally on Tuesday night, Grant and I are recording. We're recording this on a Tuesday, by the way. But this will be a show that we're going to try to nail down a time, but it might bounce around, but we will always be up by Friday morning at the very latest.